Guys, we gotta talk about Texas now. Houston school superintendent. His name is Mike Miles. And he's got some very interesting things he wants to do with libraries. And wants to convert them to disciplinary rooms. Because that's a normal thing people tend to say. To just get rid of the libraries and turn them into places to punish children. Yay! We only got one fan art for this one because it's a biggie. But this one is from Ivana Dragmeyer, and it's called Fear the Old Slime. By God, fear it, Suris. I've come... Hold on, do. Steps. I've come to bid you farewell. Oh, I know. You now seek to betray me. No. But you will never listen. But I will tell you, I will not forget our adage. We are born of the slime, made men by the slime, undone by the slime. Our eyes are not yet to open. Fear the old slime. By God, fear it. Jesus Christ! Look at that! Look at all of the little, like, protrusions coming out. We were just men. Innocent men. Normal men. It's really, really cool. And Ivana posted one more thing with it. Yes, you do hear boss music. The primeval slime. Lord Dumpy. Is that the lore we're going with now? Lord Dumpy is the primeval slime? Oh, boy. Oh, boy. As always, everybody, thank you all for your fan art submissions, even though this time it was one of you. If you want more fan art to be shown in the future, then drop it into the fan art section of the Discord. And you get to the Discord by hitting !Discord in streams, or checking in the description, or any number of things. Also hit the like button. Or subscribe. Or, you know, all the other YouTube-y things that YouTube wants you to do. Anyway, let's get on to this one. Guys, this is gonna be interesting. Sherry Curry walked past an unused library at Shadiel Elementary School each day for years, watching books collect dust on shelves. Yeah, maybe if your education system had more ways to advocate for reading, you'd have less idiots. I mean, you'd have more use for the books. It bothered the teacher enough that she went back to the school to earn a master's degree in library science, and spent the next 4 years rejuvenating the library with hundreds of new books purchased through grants, STEM activities, and beanbag chairs placed among seasonal decorations. Curry sang and danced anytime boxes of new books arrived, hoping that they would help cultivate in her students the passion for reading that has helped her navigate life since her own childhood. Yeah, please, dear God, read. I'm dead serious. Read. I am like 2 books away from finishing all of the Dresden Files. I am, and then I'm going to be starting on a new series. I'm probably going to finally sit down and read The Hobbit, and then read Lord of the Rings. I don't know, but I have not had this much fun reading a book series in years, and I am super happy about it. So please do yourself a favor, go read. Also, people who don't read fiction, they're not your friends. Do not trust them. That's like people saying that they don't like stories. They only like real things that have happened in real life. It's y'all have the most boring personalities. Get over yourselves. When she left the role this spring, burned out from juggling extra responsibilities, Curry knew she was leaving the library in good shape. The book checkout rate had more than tripled under her watch, she said, with students cramming books into their backpacks to carry home. She left a welcome note for the next librarian and hoped her successor would keep building in her years-long push to instill among students a strong reading culture. Instead, Curry was crushed this summer to learn that her former students and scores more Black and Hispanic children attending the school will return next month to a campus with no libraries or librarians. When you start taking away access to the library, you're taking away access to information. At the end of the day, it's just going to make the kids feel like reading is less important. So, I know that there's going to be a person that goes, well, you know, with the advent of the internet, we really don't need reading. Shut the fuck up. Absolutely, positively, shut your whore mouth. You are incorrect. The internet is a great place to get access to basic, stale information. Or, you know, information on the back of sweeping, angry rants like you would get on my channel. Books, on the other hand. Books take you into worlds. Books take you into the imagination of an author, a place they have crafted specifically for you to enjoy. You can learn about the mentality of the people making the media that you're consuming just by reading the stuff that they are making. Before I continue with the article, I want to give you guys an example of this. Just a really, really good example of this. The darkest book I read when I was a kid was Devil on My Back. And the story of the book was about a kid who grew up in a world where the weight of knowledge was a literal thing. Everybody had USB plugs on their back, and as you got older, you got things plugged into you that gave you more and more access to information. Schools were not about learning things for yourself anymore. They were about finding quicker and quicker ways, more efficient ways to access info. You didn't learn anything. You were given the info, period. Nothing was earned except the ability to navigate. But there was another book. Devil on My Back's a really good book. Please go read it if you haven't already. But there was another book that I read called Shade's Children. And this was the first book I read from a guy named Garth Nix. And Shade's Children was a book about a post-apocalyptic world where children die at the ripe old age of 14. They always do. Some event happened in the past where all adults were wiped from existence, and then basically in the power vacuum left over in the world, some other beings took over, and these beings waged war with one another for fun. They played chess with one another, but the way they played chess was with ferrets and myrmidons and various things they would create from the flesh of the people left in the world. The only people who were allowed to live were children who would grow up in facilities and bred for purpose. If they wanted you to become a myrmidon, they would pump you full of steroids at the ripe old age of 9, and then there was a detailed chapter about the unstringing process of the muscles to build a myrmidon. If they wanted you to become a ferret, then they would, just look up Garth Nix ferret, look up Shade's Children ferret, it's not what you're thinking. But if they wanted you to become a ferret, then they would make sure that you could run track quickly. You could squeeze into tight spaces. You were nice and limber so that you had nice wiry tissue for them to make ferrets out of, for scouting. Every single thing that they used on the battlefield was made off of the flesh and corpse of kids. I learned what a period was because of a moment in the books where a girl named Ninde specifically says, as she talks about digging a tracking device out of her wrist, it was totally unfair because as a girl, she already had to bleed enough. It is a fascinating book, and it's a young adult book, but it's a very, very dark one, and spoilers, it doesn't end well for almost anybody involved. Almost. And then I learned, as I started reading more and more of Garth Nix's stuff, because I loved Shade's Children. It was my favorite book for years. I learned, as I read the Seventh Tower series, as I read the Keys to the Kingdom series, as I read the Aberson series, all other book series done by Garth Nix, that what he normally did was high fantasy. Seventh Tower was high fantasy mixed with some post-apocalyptic stuff. It was very hard to tell the actual time frame that that book took place in. He also, Keys to the Kingdom was a series of 2 worlds where a kid basically went and fought various villains named after the days of the week in a different world, and he would get transported into that world either for or against his will, depending on which book it was. The Aberson series was about an entire magical world kept behind the wall of a military complex where the only person who could keep the place safe and stable was a fucking necromancer of all things. Each of these series were amazing, but it was weird to me that they were all so different than Shade's Children, which made me interested in the author and made me want to learn more about what kind of person the author was. It's what began my love for digging deep into franchises that I adore. If you guys have heard me on Sunset City just wax lyrical about Sonic the Hedgehog with, you know, Gilly and Nick and Wayne and Pup, the reason I do that is because when I was a kid, I wanted to learn about why Shade's Children was so different than the other things that Nix had written as I was reading through his entire library. And I found that he actually had an interview where he talked about that. It's where he talked about which books in his repertoire he wanted to be made into movies. He said that he had never had a real chance to delve into the darker side of his psyche. He had never had a chance to really put pen to paper the more nasty sides of his thoughts, the things that build up in there that if you don't get out, if you don't have an outlet for, therapists look at you in weird ways as they tell you the ways in which you need to stop bottling up your emotions. I found out that he used the writing of Shade's Children as a way to get out all of those feelings. And it's the reason he hasn't made a book since then that's as dark as Shade's Children, because he got it out of his system. He did the thing he needed to do, and he basically used the writing of my then-favorite book as his own personal therapy session. And that was a fascinating thing to me, because I didn't realize that was something that you could fucking do. But you know how I figured that out? Because I was reading. I got caught up in the multiple worlds that this author had made for me. And it got me interested in more. When you sit down and you read an actual book, it could be an audiobook if it desperately needs to. I understand having that limitation. I have that limitation now too. But as you read, you don't just get your views into a world an author's made. You get a peek into their head. You get a peek into the things they believe, the ideas they have about what an ideal world looks like, or a not-so-ideal world. That peek into the human psyche is fascinating, if you're willing to look around the corners for it. If you want another really good series that I just stampeded through the majority of, I highly recommend you look at Anne McCaffrey's Dragon Riders of Pern. It's being continued by her son, since she's been passed on for a long while now. But the Dragon Riders of Pern is a sci-fi series that takes place in what seems to be dragon-filled medieval Europe. But it's not that. It's actually an alien planet that people crash-landed on at one point in time, and then technology got lost, and then cults developed that hated tech, and oh my god, it is one of the most expansive series you can get into. And as Anne McCaffrey ages... Fucking spoilers, Jack and Quill, it's fine. It's fine. That's a... Jack and Quill, they tell you that at the beginning of the book! It's the beginning of the very first book about the White Dragons. The very first book tells you that in the first chapter. Before they ever talk about dragons at all. It is said early on. So that's a side novel? No, the very beginning of the very first book. I guarantee you, the beginning of the very first book talks about how they're actually a spacefaring colony. Anyway, it's fine. It's not that big of a spoiler. It's not the biggest thing in the world, even so. Also, the series is over 4 decades old! Read it. Point is. Or like how, as you're reading the Dresden Files, you can actually tell the moments in time that Jim Butcher is growing older as a person. He's maturing as a person. Because the earlier Dresden Files in the early aughts, those books feel like they're being written by an angsty teen or an angsty dude in his early 20s who is incredibly misogynistic and has some super, super awkward ideas about how the world works. I said the first book chronologically, maybe. I'm sure the first chapter was Flar showing up to talk to the warlord, then pissing off to a Ruatha. Hold on. But I thought everybody knew that with Dragon Riders in the thread. Okay, so Dragonflight was the very first book. And I'm fairly certain that they mentioned that in Dragonflight. But you know what? It's fine. Guess what, Jaganquill? Guess what? All you've done is given me an excuse to reread Pern. Thank you. That's all you've done. Since I knew about that from the video game adaptation, I forgot it was a video game. I forgot that was a thing. Point is, I will fist fight you, bitch, and you will lose, like last time. What do you want? Point is, reading is good. Do you see how everybody in this chat just got so up in arms about books? You see how that happened? You know why?
I'm so happy
because
to continue eat that sweet, sweet drywall.
Lore, why? But this is a thing that happens when you have a book series that people love, a book series that people are into. And I know that the same thing happens with almost any kind of fandom. The point is, video games are collaborative projects. Animated TV shows are collaborative projects. Written works, however, 9 times out of 10, they're solo projects. They're things that are being written by one person. You are getting a dive into that person's psyche. If you do not yet read, please try. I care so much that I want the reveal to be preserved. Neat. But, continuing on here, Superintendent Mike Miles, appointed in June by the Texas Education Agency to lead Houston ISD, will eliminate librarians and media specialists from the 28 campuses under his new education system, and an additional 57 aligned schools that opted into a version of the whole-scale systemic reform plan that aims to lift student achievement and improve the quality of instruction. Ah yes, the way to improve students. Remove reading. That's stupid. Akibri says, Ready Player One is a god-awful book. I disagree. I love that book. I think it's a book that is written poorly in many ways, but I actually love that book a lot. Miles said the former library spaces at most NES and NES-aligned campuses will instead be converted into team centers, formerly called Zoom rooms, where students who misbehave in the classroom will be sent to watch the lesson virtually, and others can work alone or in groups for differentiated instruction. The book collections will remain on the shelves at the school with no librarians, according to the district, with students able to take them home through an honor system, or access them during and before school hours. You know how often you have time to go to the library during school hours? You don't. The new policy marks a big departure from the priorities outlined by the previous HISD administration, led by the former Superintendent Millard House II, who aimed to put a librarian or media specialist at every campus in the district under his 5-year strategic plan and invested millions of dollars in pandemic relief funds to purchase new library books. So, let's talk about the benefits of a librarian. Let's do that, okay? You know how everybody in this group here just had a whole bunch of really, really loud opinions about the Pern series, about the Dresden series, about Garth Nix as an author? By the way, I am thrilled that so many people in my audience love the same authors I do. Holy crap. Wait, Jackie Quilch! Never mind, I pulled the omnibus off my shelf and I will cede. The introduction is the sci-fi history. I knew it! I remembered that introduction! The floor bit is chapter 2! Well, chapter 1, it's a prelude, but anyway. Anyways. You see how all of this happened organically in my chat? Also, Cup of Coca, hello! Thank you so much for the raid! Fuck you anyway, start with Harper Hall Trilogy. No, don't start with Harper Hall! Do not start with Harper Hall! Please! Do not start with Harper Hall! Read that series in release order. Do not read it, because the writing style shifts more organically that way. Harper Hall is good, but it's okay to start with other stuff. I've been incorrect on the internet. I have to commit Sudoku. Can I get a shout out for Cup of Cocoa real quick? Also, how was your stream, Coco? How was your stream? Said start with Harper Hall if you're an autistic AFAB. Oh my god. Well, Jack and Quill, I am not diagnosed autistic and I am AMAB, so heck you. It was good. How are you? I'm good. We are talking about something that is happening in Houston, Texas, where they are replacing libraries and librarians with basically discipline centers, but in between, we're also gushing about our favorite book series. I just went on an entire tirade about the Dresden Files and about the Dragon Riders of Pern series and about Garth Nix's entire written works. So I've had some problems. I've had some problems. Robert Learn says, I actually did start with the Harper Hall series 32 years ago. Neat. I haven't read in years. I'm trying to read Good Omens. Fair, fair, fair. I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to read after I'm done with Dresden. Sorry to Rama, need to sleep. Have a good rest on your stream. Fair enough, Coco. Then get some good sleep. I hope you rest well. Thank you so much for sharing your audience with me. I appreciate it. Hopefully you have a wonderful rest. It goes on to say that there is a surge of improvement and excitement about the library, so it was discouraging to take that step backwards, said Ann First, a library advocate and co-founder of a group called Friends of HISD Libraries. Oh, right! That's what I was getting into. So, you know all this enthusiasm that's coming around? Do you know what happens when you have nobody who can actually guide you through books? When you go into a library and you just have a billion choices to get through and there's nobody to guide you, you just get analysis paralysis and you walk outside of the library. That's what happens. Instead, having a librarian who has probably looked at every book in the library, even if she hasn't necessarily read them, will probably be able to give you a good idea of what you're in there for. When I was a kid, I'd be like, hey, I like taking things apart. What things? What books should I read? And there was a series of picture books that basically just had diagrams of all kinds of limousines and houses and all kinds of things that they would just like basically cut in half and put in a diagram and let you see what the insides are like. And that was fascinating to me as a kid. Librarians help with that. Devil on my back. I don't remember if that was a librarian suggestion or if that was me pulling a random book off the shelf, but either way, when you walk in and you can say, hey, these are the types of things I like to read, a librarian can help you with that. They can help you navigate that world. And not having those people there to take care of and curate those stories. It's sad. Debbie Hall, a former librarian and longtime library advocate, said learning about a new administration's plan to nix librarians at high-need campuses was a hurtful punch, especially after witnessing something of a renaissance for campus libraries that benefited from big investments in recent years. The former superintendent focus on libraries stemmed from advocacy efforts and community input that House gathered through a series of listening sessions. She said every meeting there was somebody there speaking about the importance of reading in libraries. And he listened, and he acted. As a result, the district made progress last year in accomplishing its goal to expand library services, according to data compiled by Hall and other library advocates who founded a corp called Students Need Libraries. Hall has been tracking the rise and fall of library staffing for decades and using information from the HISD Library Services Department. During the last school year, 88% of campuses had a certified librarian or teacher working in the library, up from 48% the prior school year. Only 9% of campuses offered no library services last year, down from roughly a third in the 21 to 22 school years. Also, Eros, thank you for redeeming your points for an OWL. Said, buy a tablet to read off of. The district also pledged to help nearly 80 people earn their master's degree in library science or school librarian certification over the summer, although one person in the cohort who wished to remain anonymous said that they revoked the financial support mid-May for unclear reasons, leaving only 5 people enrolled in the program. Suris' model's broken? Is it? I don't think it is. Shouldn't be. Suris looks paralyzed with anger. I think it's that I need to change the way my iPhone is tilted. There we go. Should be better. So I've found that this model does not track off of my voice. It only tracks off of my mouth shape, which creates problems.
17 months UWU.
Creates problems. The Shadow Wolf, thank you for resubscribing. Looks fixed. There's a lot here. Jesus. Let's see what else there is here. They expanded their digital resources and academic database, according to the district, with 10 times more ebooks checked out in March compared to the same time last year. The district also pledged to help nearly 80 people earn their degree. We already checked that out. All but 4 of the campuses now designated as NES schools had a librarian or media specialist last school year, according to data published online by Students Need Libraries. Although their positions were eliminated under the new plan, those personnel were given the opportunity to work in libraries at other non-NES campuses in the district. That's at least a good thing. Miles said that the staffing model for NES and NES-aligned schools does not include a librarian because the district must prioritize resources to meet specific outcomes. Like what? Including closing the achievement gap, raising student proficiency. Neither of those mean anything, though. Like, proficiency in what? Achievement gap about what? And preparing kids for their future. Reading helps you for their future. That's a thing. Just, what? His administration is raising teacher salaries and improving incentive bonuses to teachers and administrators at the campus targeted for reform. Is he just cutting all of that? Is he just cutting all those funds out of the librarian salary? Okay. Says, right now we're trying to raise achievement. We're going to try to have high-quality instruction. So the focus is on those teachers who can do that. If you have to prioritize resources, then you want to get a teacher who can deliver the science of reading versus a librarian. You realize that teachers need to be for a specific amount of kids, but a librarian can be for, like, the entirety of the amounts of books? What does any of that mean? Miles questioned whether the House administration's plan to expand librarians to more campuses was tied to any specific outcome, noting that schools should be judged by their results rather than their inputs. This is like when people judge everything based off of what you find in standardized tests, which I think is completely stupid. The outcome on standardized tests doesn't mean jack, and yet people think that they do because we've put some weird priority on them. This is boiling people and lived experiences down to nothing but numbers. He says that any big initiative needs to come with metrics for success. We're not doing things that are just popular. We're doing things that we've always done. We're not doing things that are just for fun. We're not doing things we've always done. We're not doing things just for fun. We're not doing things that are just nice to have or good unless we can measure its success. So you know that it might be impossible to measure the success of outcomes from having a librarian, but the experience of having one there is arguably better. Some librarians, library advocates, and families, however, believe the plan is short-sighted and contrary to the apparent goal of improving literacy. Brooke King, chair of the Texas Association of School Librarians, said certified librarians are highly qualified teachers who make positive impact on student learning, especially in economically disadvantaged student populations. He says it is disappointing, to say the least, that this is the plan that is going forward, especially since HISD had been making lots of progress over the last few years. It's sad to see that being undone. Also, the Witchpunk, thank you so much for the raid. How was your stream? Last year, for example, King helped a teacher find a graphic novel series for a class full of English language learners. The kids devoured it in like 2 days, and these are brand new English readers. I had to start looking outside my library to find them enough books to read. Librarians also can help build on the reading skills learned in the classroom, according to library advocates, by offering reading programs and competitions, helping kids choose books that match their interests and reading levels. Holy shit, that's almost like the thing that I said they did 10 minutes ago! The library is the lab. This is where you can practice reading, said Hall. The advocate is a former librarian. Kids need to have books that they choose, that they want to read, that they're going to learn from. Yeah, I can tell you right now, I think I hated The House on Mango Street, not because it was a bad book, but because I was told to read it. I think I hated Wings, not because it was a bad book, but because I was told to read the damn thing. I think I hated Wishing Well because I was told to read it. I think most of the books I disliked, I was told to read. I hated Lord of the Flies! I should not have hated Lord of the Flies! These are kids who really don't have other sources of books that are easily accessible. It is really sad because you go in and you see these really bright-eyed, enthusiastic kids who really want to learn and read, and they don't have the resources that the affluent kids have. Libraries offer a tranquil environment where students can study and decompress and be themselves. The library is a refuge for so many kids. And that's true. I think it's the difference between having a math teacher and then having a bunch of formulae just thrown on a fucking screen and just pointing at it to a kid and going, "Hey kid, do the thing!" You can say, "Oh, but we still have all the books available to them." Yeah, but who's ordering new ones? When a new book series comes out and people are captivated by it, who's ordering that? Who's funding that at that point? Who is advocating for the addition of those books? I'm going to leave you guys with a memory from the 90s and early aughts that some of you probably have very fond associations with if you're in my age group. The Scholastic Book Fair. I wonder if kids these days are going to have the same types of memories of the Scholastic Book Fair and the types of things they can find there and bring home, the types of worlds they get to explore off of that in a world without librarians. I wonder what kind of world that becomes. Industrial says, can we do an adult version? I mean, the adult version of the Scholastic Book Fair is walking into your local Barnes and Nobles. So book fairs were so cool. I bought so many books. I got the Orphan manga that way. I got a decent chunk of my books that way. I think I actually got some of my Keys to the Kingdom novels that way. I got the Hobbit video game on PC that way. Shame it didn't work. But in a world without librarians, I wonder, how long is it until the libraries go? Just like having all the formulae thrown on a screen, but with nobody to guide you through how to do it the first time. Reading without a guide, without somebody who is willing to sit there and go, hey, if you liked this, maybe you should try this. It's not going to go great, I don't think. And I know those are memories that I would like my children to have when the day comes where I finally have them. But let me know what you think in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you haven't already. Subscribe if you haven't already. And as always, everybody, insert end video tagline here.